thelandofisrael.com and Israel National TV present Ari Abramowitz and Jeremy Gimpel. Live from the heart of Israel, it's Tuesday Night Live in Jerusalem.
Thank you.
Every week we gather to bring one of the beautiful lights of Israel and share it with the world. And this week we have the honor of having one of the greatest rabbis, in my opinion, in the entire world, the chief rabbi of Efrat, Rabbi Shlomo Riskin.
Now, usually on our radio shows, Ari is the one that introduced the guest. And I asked special permission tonight if I would be allowed to introduce Rabbi Shlomo Riskin. You know, some people say the rabbi's too right. Some people say he's too left. Let me tell you the way that I see Rabbi Riskin. Ezra and Nehemiah ended the Babylonian exile by bringing the Jews out of Bavel, bringing them back to Israel, and bringing the Torah back to the people of Israel. Rabbi Riskin, at the height of his career in one of the most prominent synagogues in Manhattan, in Lincoln Square, left all of it, the fame, the fortune, the prestige. He picked up and brought the leaders of his community not only to Israel, but to the barren hills of Efrat. And today, Efrat is the largest settlement in Gush Etzion. His organization, Or Torah Stone, has over 18 institutions that are all dedicated to bringing the Torah back to the Jewish people in the land of Israel. There's no question that if there was a Bible written today, that he would absolutely feature in it, because he is of biblical proportions. What he's done, the example that he sets for all Jewish leaders in the exile, they all have to look at him and say, well, you know, he did it. What am I doing here? So tonight, we would like to introduce my rabbi since I can remember, Rabbi Shlomo Riskin.
That's how Jewish speakers used to speak throughout the generations. You know why I'm so thrilled to be here, and I never finish being thrilled? I'm here for 25 glorious years. The best decision I ever made after the decision to marry my wife was the decision to come to Israel. And I want to tell you something. You know why I'm still so glad to be here? Because today, I had to get my New York office. And I'm calling, and why isn't anybody answering me? And then somebody told me, you know what today's date is? And I was thrilled that I didn't know. And last week, when it was December 25th, I didn't know it either. But I darn sure knew when Rosh Hashanah was. And when Pesach and Sukkot were. You know why else I'm so glad to be here? Little kids speak Hebrew. Aren't they geniuses? And without an accent. And you know why else? I get up in the morning, 5 o'clock a.m. news. It starts with Shema Yisrael. And television closes with the verse of the day. That's what it means to live in your homeland. And there's nothing like it. But now I want to really answer the question in a little bit greater depth. Because it's a very important question. I came here first in 1960-61. And I was very excited because it was very clear to me that the confirmation of God's covenant to the Jewish people, God's promise that even if you're scattered to the ends of the heavens, God will lift us up and restore us to the land of our fathers. Devarim Lamed, Deuteronomy chapter 30, was taking place in Israel. And I met my wife here, and we fell in love, and we promised each other that we would live here. Because there's nowhere else for a Jew to live. And then I want to tell you the truth. I couldn't get a job here. I had a very good job in America. I think I could probably have gotten any job I wanted in America. I was a professor at Talmud at Yeshiva University. I was the rabbi of the Lincoln Square Synagogue. Nobody would hire me in Israel, not even as a high school teacher. And I'm not a bad teacher, I promise you. It took me a long time to find out why. I'll tell you what the secret was, because you need to know the culture of every country. Someone who once praised me very highly, and I said to him, you know, you're a liar. And he said, what do you mean? I said, because I applied to be a teacher for your high school, and you wouldn't even let me give a class to test me. And he turned red. He said, I hope that you had forgotten. He said, but you know, you looked like you were 16 years old. I was then maybe 27 or 28. You looked like you were 16 years old, and you didn't have a beard. And in this country, it doesn't work like that. And I thought to myself, so why didn't you tell me to grow a beard? And I would have done it in a minute. It's not hard to do, I promise. Now I wouldn't grow a beard if my life depended on it. But let me finish the story. I met a guy, a wonderful guy, a real biblical personality. Moshe Moshkevitz. And many of you may not have heard of him. He's in his 80s. But when I met him, and I was in my late 30s, he had excellent connections. He was the chief counsel to the Minister of the Interior. And I was here as a scholar in residence in Kibbutz Ein Surim. And I was giving a shiur, and he came to the shiur, came to the class. And at the end of the class, he said, what are you doing in America? We need you in Israel. And I said, and I need Israel, but I can't get a job in Israel. So he said, do you have a few minutes? I said, yes, I have a few hours. He took me to the empty hill, which is now Efrat. And he said to me, you know, they once asked Dizengoff, the first mayor of Tel Aviv, how do you become a mayor of a city in Israel? And Mayor Dizengoff said, you want to be a mayor of a city in Israel? Very simple. Build the city. So Moshe Moshkevitz said to me, Golda Meir in 1967 wrote in the law books there will be a city of Efrat on these hills. However, it has to be populated initially by people from high economic, educationally oriented countries. She specified, like the United States and South Africa, because she wanted a few doctors, a few lawyers, you know how it is. Jewish professions. And Moshe Moshkevitz said, let's be partners. I'll worry about the Israeli politics. You get the Americans and the South Africans because I can't speak Hebrew. We shook hands. I davened mincha on the spot. And it worked. And you know why it worked? Because the real reason I'm here is that this is a miracle country. And this is the land where not to believe in miracles is not to be a realist.
Rabbi, we have a question for you here in the crowd.
Pardon?
We have a question for you here in the crowd. You know, you give a rabbi a pulpit, you'd be here all night. All right, here we go. This is the question.
Rabbi Riskin, I would like to know, what would you advise to the American rabbis today? Would you encourage them to dismantle their communities and have them encourage their kihilot to make aliyah as you did? Or would you encourage them to strengthen their communities?
What would I advise to American rabbis today? Would I encourage them to teach people about Shabbos? Or would I encourage them to teach people about Sunday and go to church? It's the same exact question, because the same Torah that commands the Sabbath commands us to live in Israel. Bamidbar, the book of Numbers, Bamidbar, chapter 33, pasuk 53. V'horashtem et haaretz v'yeshavtem ba. You shall conquer the land and dwell in it. The Bible tells us we're supposed to live in Israel. Birkat HaMazon tells us we're supposed to live in Israel. The Amidah tells us we're supposed to live in Israel. We aren't paying attention to the Amidah. We aren't paying attention to Birkat HaMazon. You know, it's a pity that living in Israel isn't a chumrah like a black hat. Then everybody in Borough Park would be rushing to live in Israel. It's only a mitzvah.
Rabbi, before we say goodbye tonight, if you could leave with one message for all the people in the crowd and for all the people watching all over the world, what would that message be?
Can I tell a short story? What made me stay in Israel? And this is the real spiritual journey. It was very exciting to leave America. They made parties for me. They gave me a Sefer Torah. Maybe they were glad to see me leave. When I got here, the romanticism died pretty quickly. The streets weren't paved, and there was no electricity that first difficult winter, and no heat, and no bakery, and no food store. And then I would get up in the middle of the night, because I didn't have a job, and think that maybe I made a mistake. While I was having all these second thoughts and trying to figure out if I had a way back, there was a knock on my door, and Yoni Ben Ari, who still lives in Israel, and he was in charge of security, came into the room, and he came in with an Uzi, and he said to me, Kvod Harav, you have guard duty tonight from 2 a.m. to 6 a.m. My wife looked at our 4 children and said in a loud whisper, If Abba is guarding us, maybe we better spend the night in Jerusalem. Yoni Ben Ari saw me looking at the Uzi a little crookedly, and he said, "For a Rav, you mean you don't know how to shoot an Uzi?" I said, "Shoot an Uzi? I've never killed a mosquito in my life." Well, Yoni Ben Ari took me outside. There's a little forest in Efrat, which I affectionately call Central Park West Bank. And he took me out to that forest. It's much easier to learn how to shoot an Uzi than it is to learn a difficult Tosfot. So I managed very quickly. And I had guard duty from 2 to 6 a.m. I had guard duty with a guy named Yossi from one of the Scandinavian countries who's still living in Israel, in Efrat. 4 children. Anyway, Baruch Hashem, I married 2 of them. At that time, we were both much younger. The silence of the night. He asks me, "Tell me, Kvod Harav, what did you do before you made Aliyah?" And I described, without a little nostalgic longing, life as the rabbi of Lincoln Square Synagogue. And then I asked him, "What did you do before you made Aliyah?" And he said, "I was a Christian. And I went to church every Sunday with my mother and father and brother. But I always felt some kind of tie to Israel and the Jewish people that I couldn't put my finger on. When I was graduated from high school, everybody had to write a paper. I wrote a paper on the burgeoning state of Israel. Then came the 73 war. I didn't feel like going to university. I didn't know what I wanted to major in. And there was a cry for volunteers. And 3 Christian friends and I volunteered to go to Israel to work on the fields. And then I fell in love with the land. And I started reading and fell in love with the history and the theology. I wanted to keep kosher, so I became a vegetarian. It was a non-religious kibbutz I was living in. So then I wanted to keep Shabbat. So they told me, you can't keep Shabbat on this non-religious kibbutz, but what you can do is go to a special school for converts in Kfar Tzion, right near Efrat. But there was no Efrat then. And I went. And after 6 months, I was a very good student. I got a date to go to the mikveh to convert. And then I figured, hey, I'm only 19 years old. I better speak to my parents. I got in touch with them. I said I had to make a very difficult decision. They immediately sent me tickets. I went home, and after a vegetarian dinner, I announced that I wanted to link my destiny with Israel and become a Jew. My mother turned into a cold sweat and fainted dead away. When she was revived, she looked at me hard and she said to me, "You don't have to convert. You don't have to convert because I'm Jewish, and in Judaism, the religion follows the mother." When the Nazi Obersturmbannführer walked into my house, and there was a Kinderaktion, and he was collecting all the children, and my father, who was the chazan, the cantor of the shtetl, cried out, "Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad," and the Nazi shot him dead. And the Nazi picked me up and threw me into a cattle car for Terry Eisenstadt. And I felt in that cattle car that if one Holocaust took place, another was even more likely. And I didn't want my children or grandchildren to suffer like I suffered. So I took an oath that if I ever got out of the hellhole alive, it would be as a Christian. I got out, I don't know how, when, why. I had no one to answer to because all of my blood relatives were murdered. So I lived as a Christian, and until this moment, the only other person in the world who knows of my Jewish heritage is your father. But if you want to rejoin the religion of my parents and grandparents. May the God in whom I can no longer believe bless you and keep you.
Rabbi.
I just want you to know that when I heard that, I knew that there was no turning back, that I had come back, that God's promise, even if you're scattered to the ends of the heavens, I will bring you back, is taking place here. And this is the country to which every Jew in the world must and will return.
Rabbi, thank you for a lifetime of devotion to the Jewish people. It has been an honor to have you on.
Every night we want to end with a little Torah. It says that Rabbi Nachman says that every person is born with a certain quota of fear that will be expressed in this world, a certain amount of fear that will have to be lived out in this world. And you can choose to be fearful about your past, fearful about your future, fearful about your economic situation, fearful about your children. No matter what, though, you are going to experience fear in this world. But Rabbi Nachman then teaches the most amazing Torah. He says that you can take that fear and elevate it to its source. And it's you start living fearfully. You start living with a lot of courage. You start living happily because you know there's nothing to fear other than God. Tonight, everyone here in Tuesday Night Live is a part of something amazing. We've all chosen the land of Israel over fear. We've all chosen to make our lives here in the land of Israel. The Jews of Jerusalem are back after 2,000 years, and we're never going to leave. Tuesday nights in Jerusalem are never going to be the same again, because finally, Jerusalem is what it was always meant to be, a light to the entire world,